All the components of Catalyst are available open source. So if a merchant or their developers want to, check out how we've built components, say they're interested in how we built out our product carousel, and they end up liking how we built it versus how they built it, there's nothing stopping them from copy and pasting our components into their projects.
Welcome back to the Lessons for Tomorrow podcast, the motivational poster in your ear. I'm your guest host, Wayne Stratbucker, BigCommerce practice lead at AmericanEagle.com. In this episode, we're going to be diving into Catalyst. To discuss this, I'm joined by our special guest speaker from BigCommerce, the lead developer advocate, and has been at BigCommerce in BigCommerce developer relations team for over 2 years. She's passionate about education, enabling developers to build solutions on BigCommerce, and making dev lives easier. Welcome, Katie Hoesley. Katie, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Good. So why don't we just get started and you just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So you teed me up nicely. I'm Katie. I've been the lead developer advocate, actually the lead for a short period of time, but on the DevRel team for about 2.5 years. Before that, I was teaching boot camps at the Air Force and the Space Force. So I've been kind of in like developer education for a pretty long time. And I live in Denver, Colorado.
Nice. Awesome. So yeah, today we're obviously talking about Catalyst. Catalyst is pretty big in the BigCommerce space right now. So how has BigCommerce's approach to e-commerce evolved over the years that have eventually kind of led us to the development of Catalyst?
It's a great question. So like I said, I've been at BigCommerce for like 2.5 years. And the biggest evolution that I've witnessed is I feel like, and the developer relations team has really advocated for this, is the real focus on developer experience. And we've really honed in on that over the last 1.5 years. And I think Catalyst is evidence of that transition, with the focus being turned from primarily partners and merchants to now also including developers. And without losing sight of partners and merchants, we've also become a lot more open. So we're really building Catalyst in the open alongside the developers who are going to use it. And of course, we've always trusted, how smart developers are who are building on top of our platform. But this time we're building this product with them. We've sought feedback pretty aggressively since Catalyst conception. And it's an open source project that anybody can dig around in and give us feedback on. So, over the last couple of years, we've just really turned to building alongside the developers instead of building products and then giving to them and being in a really long feedback loop. We're just doing this alongside them and actively putting their feedback and their ideas into our roadmap, and really building it with them in mind, like constantly. So to me, that kind of transition from doing things kind of behind closed doors and then releasing it and then going through these long feedback loops to saying, hey, we want to build this for you. So why don't you guys be along for the ride with us? I think is the biggest transition. And I think it's actually what's made Catalyst so fun for everyone on our team to be involved in.
Absolutely. And I think it's funny because as an agency, we kind of have that feedback loop built into our projects.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of funny how you guys are like taking that and kind of adding it to your product development. I think it helps really create a community around not only like the agencies, but the developers that are working on the platform. And also, like you said, it gets you that feedback kind of directly instead of being like, oh, hey, we have an opinion about this, and instead of kind of releasing it and being like, this is our opinion, you can kind of get some feedback in that process, which is, I think it's incredible. I think there's not a lot of platforms that kind of do that as well. So yeah. So what are some of like the key features and benefits of Catalyst that differentiate compared to other e-commerce platforms, other headless e-commerce or composable e-commerce platforms?
Yeah, great question. So like I mentioned, Catalyst is being built alongside the developers who are going to use it. So, this isn't a totally novel way to approach building a product, but I think in the e-commerce landscape, it's a differentiator. Catalyst is completely non-prescriptive. So we set you up with what we believe are the best practices and the best integrations. But if you want to rip all those things out and add in all the things you prefer, we're completely fine with that. And I think most importantly, Catalyst has made Composable considerably easier than it has been in even the recent past. And again, composable commerce isn't a totally novel idea, but composable has been possible for a long time. But what I think Catalyst really accomplishes is making composable so much easier and so much more accessible to people and to merchants and to developers who previously weren't even really candidates for Composable because it's a lot of upkeep and a lot of maintenance. Catalyst really strips a lot of that out, and just makes it so much more usable for a wider audience. So I think it just makes Composable commerce much more approachable, much easier to do. Went from possible to easy. And I think for most developers, like myself, that is a very ideal transition.
Absolutely. And I think the kind of what you're saying there is like you're opinionated but not prescriptive. Is you're saying, hey, here's what we have. Here's the tech stacks, the tech partners we partner with. Here's what we think is a great solution. But that doesn't mean that you're kind of painted into that box, which I think is once again is something unique to Catalyst and BigCommerce is that you're saying like, hey, here's an opportunity, here's what we think is kind of the best solution, but it gives the ability for an agency or a merchant or anything like that to really kind of do with it what they need to, and not necessarily say like, oh, you have to fit within the box that we've created. So I think that's pretty incredible. So how does Catalyst empower businesses to create kind of unique personalized shopping experiences for their customers? As you know, personalization is huge. It's I mean, thanks to the Amazons of the world and everything like that, all these organizations that have really kind of led the charge in personalization. How do you think that Catalyst kind of helps empower businesses to do that?
So, kind of going off even what we were just talking about, we set you up with what we believe are the best practices for composable and personalization. But should you, for some reason, believe that something else is a better option, like for example, Catalyst is set to deploy using Vercel. You can rip it out and use something else if you want to. Again, we don't necessarily recommend doing that. We think Vercel, in this case, we think Vercel is the best option, but we leave decisions like that in the hands of the developers who are building these and know the needs and preferences of number one, their dev team, but number two, their customers better than we do. We're experts in e-commerce, but we aren't necessarily experts in who your customers and who your users are. I think that also feeds into BigCommerce leans very heavily on partners. We're experts in e-commerce, but we're not necessarily experts in shipping. We partner with experts in shipping, and rely on them to give you those solutions. So Catalyst was built with personalized experiences in mind, not a one size fits all mentality. And I think that is a differentiator that should leave developers and businesses, feeling very empowered to make their own decisions. And at the same time, we want to support the things that they're trying to do. We figure if one developer at one agency thinks that some technology is better than what we recommend, there's probably other developers who think the same thing. So though we give you a set of integrations or recommended integrations, we're excited to build the ones that developers want to see. So I think a lot of it is putting it in the hands of those businesses and those developers to tell us, hey, we think you need this, or we really want to see this tweaked or whatever. And for this particular product, for Catalyst, we are taking that type of feedback and putting it like right on the roadmap. I tell all developers, if you have an idea for Catalyst, now is the time to find me, and my door is so unbelievably open. I am like the most accessible person on the internet. And if you have an idea for anything, again, you know your customers better than we do. If there's something that you think you need to see, we are happy to entertain it and see if it fits onto our roadmap.
Absolutely. And I love how you kind of transitioned right into that, is that talking about how if you want to get on the if you guys if you want something, talk to us.
Yeah.
Which I think is you see other platforms kind of within the ecosystem that maybe aren't as responsive to, okay, you're going to use our technology, there's not really another option, or we're going to make the barrier to use another option so high, that it kind of it becomes unattainable, to merchants. And so I think what you're kind of talking about there is in where I know AmericanEagle.com has started to lean in hard, is like to provide that feedback, to be like, hey, this is what we see every day. And so to any of the people, any of the agencies that are listening, like get in, like any developers that are listening, like make sure you have your voice heard, because it's truly a unique experience. It's kind of a once in a blue moon kind of experience, where a platform is really being like, yeah, give us everything, give us all the things that you want, because you get to be a part of that experience, and you get to really kind of work with the team, to truly come up with the best solution available.
I think if there's agencies and developers listening, like if I'm honest, a few years ago, they might say, well, 3 years ago, I sent you guys some feedback and nothing came of it. I think the DevRel team emerging a few years ago really gave people voices that maybe didn't have a place to put that feedback, or it would come in kind of sideways and it wouldn't really get onto the roadmap. It might not even get to the ears of the engineers and the product team. But I think with our DevRel team being such an embedded part of our product and engineering org, that feedback is like immediately heard. Developers can send me a Slack about an idea and I'm immediately copy and pasting the message into those channels. And those things are immediately being thought of rather than being put on some backlog of feedback that a team may or may not get to based on how much work they have to do. So I think us kind of like refocusing on developers and really reorganizing internally so that we have mechanisms to hear that feedback and to actually do something with it has been like kind of a game changer, especially as we've been building out Catalyst.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think I totally agree, and your team has been immensely responsive to any feedback that people are giving. So yeah, if you guys aren't on that Slack channel, make sure you get on it. So with kind of looking at, I know Catalyst it's kind of it recently was released. We're kind of working through adding some additional functionality to it. What, in your opinion, are some best practices for businesses that are kind of looking to migrate to Catalyst or leverage its features and online presence? Because obviously, I know right now we were talking a lot about devs and all that kind of stuff. How about merchants? Like, what do you think is the best way to kind of come at Catalyst and how they can leverage, kind of enhance their online experience for all of their online customers?
That's a great question. Yeah, we talk so much about Catalyst, and then it's like, how do I use it? What is it? Where is it? What do I do with it? And so at the end of the day, Catalyst is an open source reference architecture. So for example, if a merchant is already live on Next.js using their own custom solution, they can incrementally adopt features of Catalyst that they think will help them in terms of developer velocity, experience, site speed, kind of anything like that. So for example, all the components of Catalyst are available open source. So if a merchant or their developers want to, check out how we've built components, say they're interested in how we built out our product carousel, and they end up liking how we built it versus how they built it, there's nothing stopping them from copy and pasting our components into their projects. This is, again, an open source project that we want people to use. We think it's the best way to do this. So I think a good way for merchants and developers to think about it is that Catalyst is not an all or nothing migration. You don't have to overhaul everything at once. You don't have to make this really big decision at the drop of a hat, or you have to wait 2 years to start thinking about it when it kind of fits on your roadmap. Because it's open source and intended to be used as a reference architecture. You can use as much or as little of Catalyst as you want to meet whatever business needs you may have.
Yeah, and I think you touched briefly on it, and one of the things I want to dig into is obviously, if anybody's following kind of the BigCommerce ecosystem, and has heard Brent talk at anything about Catalyst, he talks about how fast it is, how incredibly fast it is. Also, if you've been following the Git, like you see how like when once they deploy, they're running these lighthouse scans. So how does Catalyst address kind of the growing demand? Everybody wants to hit 100 on every single site all the time. How is Catalyst doing
So this is actually kind of a simple answer, but we've built Catalyst from the ground up to be responsive and and it has continuous performance testing set up to verify that we are delivering perfect Lighthouse scores and great performance on mobile. So I think Catalyst was just kind of a unique timing where when we didn't build something and then have to go back and re-optimize it and do all these overhauls. It's just been built from the ground up to be that way. So yeah, Brent always talks about site speed. People love the site speed. The Lighthouse scores are on all of our slide decks because it's like a great little thing to look at. It is evidence of the site speed, but really it's that our developers worked like fairly tirelessly from the ground up to make sure that those things were a priority. Because, again, like developer experience, developer velocity, and site speed are just these things that it was built with in mind. So I think when you build something that way, it's not easier to attain. It's obviously difficult to get there. I wouldn't want any of our engineers listening to have me think or have me say that what they did was easy. It's not. But I think it's just more attainable to achieve those things when you start planning something, and those are kind of the tenets of what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. And so with obviously like the build it right the first time, kind of measure twice, cut once kind of philosophy. What does the future hold for Catalyst? Like how is it going? In my opinion, I think it's going to make a pretty big splash within the e-commerce space. So like what is your opinion? How do you think that's going to shape the future of e-commerce?
So I think the exciting thing about Catalyst is that I think the future is bright, but I think the future is also fairly undefined. And by undefined, I just mean that the roadmap isn't set in stone. We don't have a finish line that we're getting to. This will be something that we constantly iterate on based on feedback from our partners and from developers and from merchants, telling us what they want and what they need. And as everyone in the tech ecosystem knows, those things are changing literally by the day. They've probably changed from today, from when we started building Catalyst. So kind of like I've touched on before, if you're someone interested in Catalyst and you've gotten started building and you want to say and where we go next, now is the time to let us know. We're just in constant conversation about what's next and what needs to become a new priority or what things need to be reprioritized. And a big part of my role is relaying to our product and engineering teams what those developers and merchants really want. And I think really listening to the people that are really using those tools is something we're not gonna stop doing. I think now is the time if you want to get on the roadmap for the near future. But I think the door is going to remain open. That we always want to hear back from people because we know that merchant needs are always changing. We know that developer preferences are always changing. And so yeah, I think that kind of having this like undefined place we're going, but we're going there alongside the developers and partners who are actually using Catalyst, makes it really exciting. I mean, really exciting for me because my job hovers around like these developer preferences and making sure they get what they need. So, again, I'm shameless plug, but I tell everyone this: talk to me. The devs who build on BigCommerce are smart and experienced, and they're our real users, and they know way more about the merchants that they serve than I do. And so they're the ones that we really want to hear from to make Catalyst both a large part of the future of our platform and something that developers really want to use, and not really want to use in 2024, but really want to use for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I think we've obviously been talking about like a lot of the developers and agencies and stuff like that. The other like, big portion of this are the merchants, the businesses that are kind of looking so what's the next big thing. So how do you see kind of businesses and merchants can stay ahead in kind of this ever evolving landscape within e-commerce? I mean, uh, Next.js has exploded in popularity. React is extremely popular. How do you think that businesses can continue to stay ahead with incorporating Catalyst into their system architecture?
Yeah, this is a great question. And my answer is really parallel to the advice developers always get from like older developers. And it's to stay on top of what's new and be willing to hear feedback from your users. I think the way an open source project runs is kind of the way businesses could run, in my opinion. Like, we constantly want to hear from everyone. We are not resistant to feedback. And of anyone, I'm not resistant to negative feedback. I always tell everybody, tell me everything you hate. I'm perfectly happy taking in negative feedback. And so, in this case, whether it's developers, merchants, shoppers, anybody in between, I think knowing that your users are often right, it's kind of like that customer is always right trope, but I really do think it's real. Like they're the ones using it, they're the ones who have their livelihood. This is their business. Of course, they know more than we do. So, if we resisted feedback from everyone because we feel like we're the experts, we'd be missing out on a lot of really, really great ideas. And we are e-commerce experts, but like I said before, we're not shipping experts. Other people are. So I think really listening to the people who use your products and who know more than you about facets of your product, or how it's used rather, is really, really important. And I think Catalyst has really shown us that building things alongside the folks who are going to use them yields really great results. You wind up continually building something they want versus that, like, you ship a product, everyone hates it, and then they are all mad at you, and then you go redo it, and then you're in this kind of vicious cycle of trying to appease people because you thought you knew what they wanted. I think merchants and developers, and it's kind of the same approach for both, where if you really listen to your users and really listen to the people who are using what you're putting out there, I think that's like a really safe bet for the future of whatever it is you're building.
Absolutely. So I think like kind of to like come in summary of all of this is that not only is it developers, is it agencies, but it's also merchants that need to be excited, look into it, give feedback. I think some of the we've already started to see some merchants interested in it, and that like they're interested in the fact that like they get to help build the roadmap. I mean, that's basically free work, guys. So that's to me, if I were a business owner, that'd be pretty great. If I got to help kind of drive the roadmap for the product that I'm using, and that's kind of built into everything that I'm already paying for. So
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, of course, like any business, a user will tell us or ask a question, "Why don't you have this?" And we look at each other like, yeah, that's a really good idea. Why don't we have that? Like, you realize we're in a little bit of an echo chamber of team. Every team is where, you've put all the things on the board that you think are possible. And then someone who actually uses it says, well, I use it like this. And you just realize there's just good ideas everywhere. So I think being really receptive to other people's ideas is number one, like a really big success of Catalyst. But number two, I think that can be a really big success of any business or any product.
absolutely, absolutely. And I forget who says it, but if one person in the room has the question, most
Everyone
likely
does.
10 people in the room have the same question.
Totally.
So always ask questions, give feedback. And so I think that's a great it's a great mentality to have, because I think it is a shift. I think it's a shift in we've built this, and now you need to be able to customize it and use it. Instead, the shift is, hey, how would you want to use the platform? How would you think that it would be most effective? So I think that's absolutely fantastic advice. Thank you for turning into the future by listening to the Lessons for Tomorrow podcast. For more information about the topics discussed today, check out the description of this episode. If you want us to cover a topic or submit feedback, email us at lessonsfortomorrow@americaneagle.com and let us know. Be sure to follow the podcast wherever you listen to them to stay up to date with us. While you're at it, give us a rating and share this podcast with others to prepare them for the future. And don't forget to follow us on social media. This episode is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios. I'm your guest host, Wayne Stratbucker, and Tim will catch you on the next lesson.